Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment, just one split second, between what someone does to you and how you choose to respond, and in that moment lies your power. Most people don't realize it, they give it away. They react, they explode, they defend, and they call it strength. But the truth is, real power doesn't live in reaction, it lives in response. Today, we're going to talk about that difference, because the people who master it, they don't just protect their peace, they lead the room, they own the energy, and they win the moments that most people lose. This isn't about being passive, it's about being in control of your words, your emotions, your choices, and ultimately your life. Let's talk about why reaction gives power away, and why response is how you hold on to it. There's something seductive about anger. It makes you feel powerful, like you're finally standing up for yourself, like your voice is louder, your presence bigger, your pain finally seen. It surges through your chest and makes you believe for a moment that you've taken the power back, but that's the illusion, because the second you let anger take the lead, you've already handed control to someone else. Anger doesn't come from nowhere. It often shows up when we feel unheard, disrespected, or pushed too far. And while the feeling itself is valid, it's a signal, a flare. It's not the solution. People who want to get under your skin aren't looking to resolve anything. They're looking to create a reaction. They know if they can get you mad, they no longer have to answer for their behavior. Your reaction becomes the new topic, your tone, your volume, your words. You become the focus. Not what they did. That's why anger is a trap, because it shifts the spotlight away from truth and onto noise. You might be right, completely justified, but the moment you let anger take center stage, your credibility gets clouded. And worse, it gives the other person exactly what they wanted, proof that you're too much, too emotional, irrational. It allows them to avoid accountability and instead focus on your explosion. It's not that anger makes you wrong. It's that anger, when unchecked, makes you lose strategy, and in moments of emotional chaos, strategy is everything. The more reactive you are, the easier you are to control. The person who stays calm controls the tempo of the conversation. They steer the dynamic, but the one who gets triggered is suddenly following someone else's emotional rhythm, not their own. There are people who will deliberately push buttons just to see how much you're willing to give them. They want the outburst because if they can make you yell, they get to paint you as unstable. If they can make you lash out, they can walk away feeling like they've won, and that's the trap. You think you're defending yourself, but you're actually walking straight into their plan. Anger makes you impulsive, it narrows your focus, it strips away your ability to respond thoughtfully and instead urges you to attack, defend, explode, and in that moment your power isn't in your hands anymore, it's in theirs. Because they orchestrated it, they chose the moment, they decided when to push, and you took the bait. Now let's be clear, this isn't about suppressing what you feel, it's not about being passive or silent when someone crosses the line. But it is about understanding that just because someone wants a reaction doesn't mean you have to give them one. That space between stimulus and response, that tiny pause is where your power lies. That's where you decide whether to escalate or elevate. When someone sees that they can't shake you, when your voice stays steady, your body language calm, your words precise, it's disarming, because now they're exposed, their tactics fall flat, they can't say you overreacted. They can't shift the blame. They're stuck facing the truth of their own behavior, and that's uncomfortable for someone who was counting on your anger to cover it. And this doesn't just apply in conflict. It applies in relationships, in work, in moments when someone tests your patience, underestimates you, or tries to belittle you. If you meet that with rage, you become easy to predict, easy to provoke. But when you stay grounded, when you decide you don't get to decide how I respond, you hold a kind of power that noise can't reach. Anger screams, I'm not okay, but calm whispers, I see what you're doing and I'm not playing. That kind of clarity is what throws people off. Because the average person expects drama. They expect reaction. They're not prepared for the kind of stillness that sees through the manipulation and chooses peace anyway. So the next time you feel that wave rising, the heat in your face, the tension in your hands, the words forming faster than your mind can catch them, take a moment, breathe. You don't have to give away your peace just because someone else is trying to disrupt it. Your anger is valid, but your power lies in how you use it. Let it inform you, not define you. Calm people aren't calm because life has been kind to them. They're calm because they've learned, often the hard way, that reacting to everything costs more than it gives. They've sat in rooms where people raised voices, slammed doors, hurled insults, and they realized that the loudest one rarely walks away with the win, the calm one does. The one who doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to defend every attack, doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. That's the one people remember. Calm is presence. It's the decision not to let someone else's chaos become your identity. It's strength without display, control without noise, power without performance. It doesn't mean you're unaffected. It just means you don't hand your emotional steering wheel over to people who haven't earned that privilege. Calm people feel everything, anger, disappointment, pain, but they know how to carry it with elegance. You notice it in moments of conflict. One person explodes, the other stays still. The room gets quiet because everyone realizes something. The one who remains composed has the upper hand. Calm isn't just emotional, it's psychological leverage. It signals you know who you are, and nothing confuses someone more than expecting you to break, and watching you hold your center instead. There's a different level of confidence in someone who doesn't flinch. Not because they don't care, but because they've trained themselves not to be pulled into emotional traps. Calm people don't enter battles to prove themselves. They walk away from unnecessary noise because their worth isn't tied to winning debates. It's tied to protecting their peace. They understand that most arguments aren't about truth. They're about ego, fear, or control, and you don't need to attend every power struggle you're invited to. People underestimate calm. They think it's soft. They confuse it with passivity, but the truth is, staying calm in a moment where everything around you is screaming for a reaction takes discipline most people don't have. It's easier to lose control, easier to yell back, easier to throw blame. But calm takes awareness, it takes restraint, it takes strength to feel triggered and still choose maturity over reaction. And it's not just about how you deal with others, it's about how you lead yourself. Calm minds think clearer, they make sharper decisions, they don't rush into action just to relieve discomfort, they pause, they observe, they listen, and then they respond with precision. While others are stuck in loops of drama, the calm person is 10 steps ahead. Because their energy isn't scattered, it's focused. In relationships, calm becomes the anchor. It's the difference between reacting from insecurity and responding from understanding. It's saying, I hear what you're saying, but I won't let this moment define how I treat you. It's diffusing tension with truth instead of adding fuel with emotion. When two people argue, both think they're right. But the one who keeps their composure is the one who gets heard, because calm invites safety, and people listen differently when they feel safe. In career, calm is leadership. It's walking into a high-pressure situation and being the person everyone looks to because you're not panicking. You're focused, you're steady, and that presence calms others. Teams don't follow the loudest person in the room. They follow the one who makes them feel secure when everything is uncertain. That's calm power. It builds trust, it commands respect, and it leaves an impact long after the conversation ends. There will always be people who try to provoke you, not because they hate you, but because your calm threatens them. Your refusal to engage in chaos highlights their own lack of control. It shows them what they're not ready to face in themselves, and rather than do the work, they'd rather pull you down to their level. That's why your calm must be protected, not as a defense, but as a declaration. I decide how I show up, not you. Real power is rarely loud, it's quiet. It's the ability to stay composed when you've been misunderstood. It's choosing grace when you've been insulted. It's walking away with your dignity intact when your pride is begging you to stay and fight. That's calm, and it's not just powerful, it's magnetic, because in a world full of noise, the one who remains still becomes unforgettable. There's a quiet kind of power in knowing that your peace isn't up for negotiation, that your inner calm doesn't belong to the world, that not everyone gets to touch it, test it, or take it. And yet, so many people treat their peace like it's something to be earned through someone else's approval. They hand it over in conversations that weren't worth having, arguments that led nowhere, and connections that never deserved that kind of access in the first place. You don't owe your calm to every situation that demands your reaction. Not every text deserves a reply. Not every opinion requires a defense. Not every insult needs to be corrected. Sometimes protecting your peace means knowing when to stay quiet, when to walk away, and when to simply let people think what they want, because you've stopped living your life to correct misunderstandings. People will always test your boundaries, especially when they realize you've found a sense of self that doesn't depend on their validation. The moment you stop chasing approval, someone will try to trigger the version of you that still craves it. They'll push, they'll poke, they'll tell you you're selfish for choosing space, cold for not responding, arrogant for protecting your energy. But it's not arrogance to protect your peace, it's wisdom. It's maturity. It's the understanding that emotional access is earned, not assumed. You are not obligated to be emotionally available to everyone. Just because someone is in your life doesn't mean they have access to every part of you. You're allowed to hold space for yourself without guilt. You're allowed to say, "not right now," without needing to explain. You're allowed to prioritize your mental clarity over someone else's need for attention. And if someone takes that personally, it says more about their entitlement than your boundaries. Some people feed off your reaction. They aren't looking for understanding. They are looking for chaos. They want to know they still have the power to shake you, to get under your skin, to ruin your day with a single message or a passive comment. That's why your peace must be protected like your most valuable asset, because it is. And once you start treating it that way, the dynamics of your relationships change. You'll notice how many conversations were never about connection. They were about control. How many check-ins were actually guilt trips. How many apologies were really just doorways for repeated behavior. When your peace becomes your priority, your tolerance for emotional games evaporates. You stop explaining your choices to people who aren't really listening. You stop debating with people who don't respect your silence. You stop showing up for situations that consistently cost you more than they give. And sometimes the challenge isn't external, it's internal. It's the guilt that creeps in when you say no, the overthinking that follows when you set a boundary. The urge to soften your stance so someone doesn't think you've changed, but the truth is, you have changed, you've grown, you've realized that your peace isn't something you loan out to anyone who asks for it. You've learned that it takes energy to be calm, and not everyone deserves that energy. There's nothing selfish about choosing peace over performance. You don't exist to be emotionally available on demand. You don't have to be the one who always smooths things over, always replies with grace, always sacrifices your stillness to keep someone else comfortable, because the moment you start doing that, you teach people that your peace is negotiable, and they will treat it that way. You weren't put here to keep everyone else emotionally regulated while you fall apart quietly. You weren't meant to carry conversations that drain you, or heal people who hurt you, or explain yourself endlessly just to be understood. The right people won't need to be convinced to respect your peace. They'll see it, they'll feel it, and they'll meet you there instead of asking you to leave it. When your peace becomes non-negotiable, your world shifts. You lose the noise, you lose the guilt, you lose the need to justify your calm to people who only know chaos, and in that stillness you find something better than approval. You find yourself whole. Grounded, unbothered, and finally free. There's a difference between reacting and responding. One is impulsive, the other is intentional. One gives your power away, the other helps you keep it. And the more you understand the gap between those two, the more control you gain over your life, your relationships, and the energy you carry through both. When someone says something hurtful, your instinct is to snap back. Defend yourself, prove a point, make sure they feel the weight of what they just did, and that makes sense, because reacting feels like reclaiming power, but more often than not, that reaction is the very thing that hands them the control they were reaching for in the first place. Reacting is fast, it's emotional. It comes from the part of you that's still raw, still open, still healing. It doesn't come from clarity, it comes from the wound, and the problem is, wounds don't always speak truth. They speak pain, so when you react from that place, you end up saying things you didn't mean, committing to things you'll later regret, or letting someone else's behavior shape how you see yourself. People who understand how emotions work know this. That's why they poke at the parts of you that haven't been fully healed. They know where to press. They know what triggers you. They know that if they can get a reaction, they can shift the narrative. Now it's not about what they did. It's about how you responded. Suddenly, you're defending your tone instead of your truth. Response is different. Response is what happens when you slow everything down. When you recognize the trigger but refuse to let it take the lead, responding means you've taken a breath, you've checked in with yourself, you've decided, this situation doesn't get to decide how I show up today. It's power, just quieter. It's strength, just smarter. It's knowing that you can feel something deeply and still choose not to act from that feeling. The people who hold the most power in a room aren't the ones yelling to be heard. They're the ones who can sit in discomfort and still think clearly. They're not pretending they're okay. They're just not letting temporary emotion make permanent decisions for them. That's what response gives you. Options, perspective, control. There's a kind of calm that makes you unshakable, not because you don't feel, but because you've trained yourself to pause, to ask, what outcome do I want here? Instead of how do I make them feel what I feel right now. That pause, that moment of presence is where your response is born, and from that space your words carry more weight. Your silence becomes a message. Your behavior sets the tone instead of feeding the fire. And when people don't get the reaction they're used to, it throws them off, because they expect you to defend, to over-explain, to raise your voice. But when you stay grounded, when you say less but mean more, when you respond with clarity instead of chaos, they don't know what to do with that. Suddenly, they're left with their own behavior echoing back at them, and it's uncomfortable. That's the power of response. It holds up a mirror instead of throwing a punch. In relationships, reacting often creates patterns you don't even realize you're reinforcing. You react emotionally, they react back, and now you're both stuck in a cycle that goes nowhere. Responding breaks that cycle. It introduces maturity into a space that's used to volatility. It shifts the tone of the conversation. And it sends a clear message: we don't solve anything when we both lose control. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you process it before you release it. You sit with it. You own it. And when you're ready, you speak, not to hurt, not to win, but to be heard. That's when you start communicating instead of just reacting. That's when your words land, because they're no longer about proving a point. They're about honoring your standard. It's tempting to react, it's faster, it feels powerful in the moment, but true strength isn't about how quickly you can fire back, it's about how well you can choose your moment. Your peace doesn't have to be sacrificed every time someone tries to provoke you. Your value doesn't need to be defended through anger, and your control doesn't come from how loud you get, it comes from how intentional you are. Reaction might make noise, but response makes impact, and in the end, that's the kind of power that lasts. So the next time someone tries to push you, provoke you, or pull you into their chaos, pause. Remember, you're not here to react to everything that disrespects your peace. You're here to move with purpose, to speak with clarity, and to protect your energy like it matters, because it does. Reaction might feel powerful for a second. But response builds something deeper. It builds self-respect. It builds control. It builds the kind of presence that can't be shaken. Ladies and gentlemen, your power has never been in how loud you can be. It's been in your ability to stay grounded, to stay intentional, and to remind the world quietly but firmly, I choose how I show up. No one else gets to decide that for me.